Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into, well, probably the most stressful scenario imaginable, the 2 a.m. crisis. You've done all the hard work.
Right.
You've built the detailed procedures, what the security folks might call Incident Response Control 8 or IR-8. You've practiced drills. You've compiled contact lists. Everything's documented. Binders, drives, encrypted folders, you name it. But then it happens. Something goes sideways. Maybe your main email gets compromised, and your brain just it turns to absolute soup. You're running purely on adrenaline. So where on earth do you find all that perfectly organized, detailed planning then? You definitely don't have time to dig through 5 layers of folders or, unlock 3 different security vaults. So our mission today is to do a deep dive into this single document that's designed to be your lifeline in exactly that moment. The IR-1. The one-page emergency overview. We found this incredibly practical framework in a Substack focused on digital preparedness, and it's basically your digital cheat sheet for emergencies.
Yeah. And what's really key here is recognizing that all that great preparation, it's only truly valuable if you can actually access it under serious duress. And just to clarify for you listening, when we say IR-1 or IR-8, we're talking about incident response controls. Think of them as different layers of your plan. IR-1 is control 1, it's foundational. It's not the super detailed plan itself that's the big one, the IR-8. The IR-1 is more like the critical, easy-to-scan roadmap. It points you to everything else and crucially reminds you of your main priorities when, frankly, clear thinking has just flown out the window. It really is like that emergency card you keep in your wallet, right? The one with your blood type and who to call. You don't need your entire medical history on that little card. Just the absolute vital info that stops someone making a terrible mistake when panic sets in.
Okay. So let's unpack that core idea a bit. Why bother with this one-pager if we've already spent maybe days building out the detailed IR-8 plan? Doesn't creating an IR-1 just sound like, redundant planning, extra work?
It's a fair question. But the rationale we found in the Substack is pretty blunt about it. Human memory is terrible under stress. And even without stress, just think about organization over time. 6 months from now, definitely a year from now, you probably won't remember exactly where you saved that detailed plan or which specific accounts you decided were the most critical back when you were calm and thinking clearly. So the overview, the IR-1, it isn't about doing all the detailed steps listed in the IR-8. It's about finding those steps quickly. And maybe even more importantly, it's about reasserting your strategic focus. It's the thing you grab when you're shaky and need an anchor. Fast.
Right. So its purpose is less about the nitty-gritty logistics and more about giving you a psychological edge. It tells you, instantly, okay, here's where everything is stored, here's what I decided matters most right now, and here's the general approach I planned out when I was calm and rational. It's basically leveraging your calm past self to rescue your frantic present self.
Exactly. You're outsourcing the panic thinking.
Which brings us to the actual structure. For a document that carries so much weight, the framework suggested is surprisingly lean. The Substack says it really only needs 3 main categories of information.
It has to be simple. That's mandatory for it to actually work. If it takes you more than, say, a minute to read and understand, it's already failed its purpose. So the first pillar is purely logistical. Where your stuff lives. Location, location, location. That's it. Specifically, where's the full IR-8 plan? Is it on a specific encrypted USB drive? Is it printed out in a locked file cabinet somewhere safe, stored in a particular cloud vault? It also needs to list the precise, secure locations for things like your recovery codes and any essential contact lists the ones you'll need if your main phone is suddenly locked down or compromised. It's pure navigation. Find the map.
Okay, so pillar 1 is logistics, finding the treasure map, basically. Then pillar 2 gets into deciding which treasure chest to open first. This is your priorities, but let me push back on that a little. Isn't securing my bank account always the #1 priority? Why does this overview force us to choose between, say, the bank, my main email, and maybe critical work files?
That's where the real value of thinking this through beforehand with the IR-1 comes in. Securing the bank seems like the obvious first step, right? But often, your primary email account, that's the master key. It unlocks everything else: your bank access resets, your work systems, maybe even social media recovery. So if you rush to secure the bank but leave that main email account wide open, well, you might have just wasted critical time and effort. This section forces you to predetermine that triage hierarchy based on your specific situation, your digital life. For a lot of people, maybe it is securing the email first, then perhaps locking down remote work access, and then checking financial accounts. The goal here is to figure out what your most critical control point is, what stops the bleeding fastest, and this pillar also requires you to set a threshold. When do you stop trying to fix it yourself and immediately call for external help? Like if it looks like ransomware or full-blown identity theft is happening, maybe your policy is stop, immediately call that expert you have on speed dial. Don't hesitate.
That makes a lot of sense. You're outsourcing that should I call for help panic decision to the plan itself. Which leads us nicely into the third category, your approach. This sounds a bit philosophical. It's about framing your mental model before disaster strikes. But hang on. If I'm panicking, running on fumes at 2 a.m., am I really going to pause and calmly consult my documented philosophical approach to digital security? Doesn't writing down my style just create more stuff to process when my brain is already overloaded?
See, this is where the insight behind the IR-1 framework really shines, I think. You're not looking up your philosophy to, guide your specific technical actions in that moment. You're using that documented approach to prevent a default, probably unhelpful, fight-or-flight overreaction. The framework suggests noting down whether you generally lean cautious, like your instinct is to immediately unplug every single device from the wall. Or maybe you're more practical, preferring a quick, calculated risk assessment before you start disconnecting things that might hold valuable forensic data. Just seeing that sentence you wrote when you were calm, my approach is cautious, or my approach is practical, gather info first. It triggers the memory of that rational decision-making process. You're reminding your panicked self. Okay, wait. When I thought about this calmly, I decided I should wait 5 minutes to see what's happening, not just pull every plug instantly. It acts like a mental circuit breaker. And crucially, this section also makes you commit to a review cycle. How often are you going to look at all this again? Yearly. Every 6 months. This bit ensures the IR-1 itself, and crucially, all the resources it points to, don't just gather dust and become completely stale and useless.
Okay, let's tie this all together then. Let's really synthesize the core difference between this quick overview, the IR-1, and the heavy lifting document, the detailed plan, the IR-8.
Right, we keep coming back to the analogy because it works so well. The IR-8, the detailed plan, that's the full recipe book. It says, if server X fails, do steps 1, 2, and 3, and here are the exact command lines you need to type. It's got all the deep procedural detail. The IR-1, though, that's just the overview. It's that note you stick on the fridge.
Right.
It says all the detailed recipes are in the blue binder. Or maybe the blue binder is in the fireproof safe, combination 1, 2, 3, 4. And maybe it adds, remember, our family prioritizes not burning the house down over saving the slightly burnt casserole.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you location and philosophy, the big picture view, not the tiny mechanical steps.
That clarity really highlights the claim that you can actually make it in 10 minutes. It's not supposed to be this massive project. It's really just filling in a few key blanks. For you listening, the prompt structure is incredibly simple. My detailed incident response plan, the IR-8, is stored at, you write down the specific location. If things go wrong, I handle them in this exact order. List priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, like email, bank, work files. I call for external help immediately when. Define your trigger ransomware, identity theft, anytime I'm locked out. And finally, I commit to reviewing this entire system. Pick a frequency once a year, every 6 months.
And probably the most vital practical reminder that the Substack framework gives is, save this IR-1 somewhere you will actually find it under duress. If it's encrypted with the same super complex 30-character password that you know you'll forget when you're panicked, well, you've completely missed the point. It needs to be the most easily accessible, yet still secure, index card or digital note you own. Think simple and findable. And if you look at the bigger picture of all these incident response controls, the IR-1 really is the foundational piece. It's the index, it's the mission statement, and it's that psychological defense mechanism that ties together every other bit of preparation you've done.
So just to recap the value here, the IR-1 is that lifeline. It's the absolute shortcut you need when your adrenaline is spiking and you can't think clearly. It's designed to turn that initial chaos into some semblance of clarity by instantly reminding you of your strategy and where your critical resources are actually located. It could be the difference between fumbling around for half an hour, maybe even making things worse, and reacting strategically within just a couple of minutes.
Absolutely. The whole goal is to offload that critical decision-making burden precisely when you are least capable of making good decisions. So now that you understand this crucial difference between the recipe, the detailed IR-8, and the quick fridge note, the IR-1, here's a final thought for you to maybe mull over. If you were hacked right now, this second, or 2 a.m. tonight, what specific location, physical or digital, would be the absolute safest and most readily accessible place to keep your IR-1 overview? A place where grabbing it quickly doesn't accidentally compromise the very information it contains. That specific choice where you put that one page, that's arguably the final critical step in making your incident response planning truly effective.